The first thing humanity learned about their place in the universe was that they were late to the party. The second thing they learned was that nobody wanted them there anyway. 3 months had passed since the Kepler space station detected the first signs of alien technology. Radio signals and patterns no human mind could have created, followed by gravitational anomalies that made Einstein weep in his grave. Dr. Maya Foster had been tracking these readings from her laboratory in Geneva when the impossible happened. Ships appeared in Earth's solar system like ghosts materializing from thin air, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. The Galactic Sovereign Council had found Earth. President Hayes received the message at 3 in the morning, Washington time. The translation came through every satellite, every radio, every communication device on the planet simultaneously. The voice that spoke was not human, yet somehow every person on Earth understood it perfectly in their native language. Species of the third planet, you have achieved faster-than-light travel and thus qualify for evaluation by the Galactic Sovereign Council. We are the governing body of this galaxy, established when your species was crawling in mud. For 12,000 years we have maintained order among the stars. Ambassador Thane materialized on every screen across the world. His form was tall and crystalline, with faceted surfaces that caught light in ways that hurt to look at directly. When he moved, reality seemed to bend around him like heat waves rising from summer pavement. You will be given 72 hours to make your choice. Submit to council authority and enjoy the protection and advancement we offer to all civilized species. Your people will know peace, prosperity, and technological wonders beyond your current understanding. Refuse, and your species will be removed from existence as a threat to galactic stability. The message ended with coordinates in space where Earth's representatives could meet with council negotiators. Then silence returned, leaving 8 billion humans staring at screens that showed nothing but alien ships waiting in the void like patient predators. Emergency sessions began immediately. The United Nations building in New York filled with world leaders who had been enemies just hours before. Wars stopped mid-battle as generals received orders that made no sense until they understood the bigger picture. Humanity faced its first truly global decision. Admiral Richards found himself in command of humanity's entire space fleet by default. At 53, he had overseen the construction of every major spacecraft in Earth's arsenal. 200 ships in total, most of them research vessels with hastily mounted weapons. The flagship Defiance was barely a year old, designed for exploration rather than combat. "Sir, we have visual confirmation of the alien fleet," reported Lieutenant Torres from the navigation station. The main screen showed what the Council had brought to Earth's doorstep. 3,000 ships hung in space like a metal constellation, each one pulsing with energy that registered on every sensor array humanity possessed. Dr. Foster worked alongside her international team to analyze the alien technology. What they found made little sense according to human physics. The ships seemed to be alive, growing and adapting like organisms rather than machines. Their hulls rippled with patterns that suggested biological processes on a scale never before imagined. "These aren't just ships," Foster explained during the emergency scientific briefing. "They're creatures. Living beings the size of cities bred or evolved for space travel and warfare. Our weapons might as well be throwing stones at elephants." The debate in the UN was fierce. Some delegates argued for immediate surrender. The technology gap was too vast, the threat too real. Others insisted that humanity had never bowed to tyrants and would not start now. The argument continued for 3 days while the alien fleet waited with mechanical patience. Colonel Park from the South Korean space program had a different perspective. "Look at their formation," he said during one heated discussion. "They're not preparing for battle. They're waiting for us to make a choice. This isn't the first time they've done this." "Which means other species have faced this same decision," added General Williams, "and some of them chose to fight." "Where are those species now?" asked President Hayes. The silence that followed answered that question better than words. Religious leaders prayed while scientists calculated odds that made lottery tickets look like sure bets. Social media exploded with every opinion imaginable, from surrender to resistance to escape plans that involved hiding in underground bunkers until the aliens got bored and left. But as the deadline approached, something unexpected happened. Humanity began to unite in a way that had never occurred before in recorded history. Old grudges seemed petty when faced with extinction. Political differences meant nothing when the entire species was at stake. Admiral Richards received the final decision with 12 hours remaining on the council deadline. Every major nation had voted. Every significant leader had agreed. The choice was unanimous, which surprised everyone including Richards himself. The Defiance moved to the coordinates provided by the council. Ambassador Thane's ship waited there. A massive organic structure that looked more like a coral reef than a spacecraft. It dwarfed the human vessel by a factor of 50, its surface alive with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in hypnotic rhythms. "Open a channel to the alien vessel," Richards ordered. "Channel open, sir." Richards stood in the center of his bridge, surrounded by officers who represented the best of humanity's space program. Behind him, Earth hung in the void like a blue marble, beautiful and fragile and worth dying for. "Ambassador Thane, this is Admiral Richards of the Earth Defense Force. We have made our decision." The crystalline alien appeared on the main screen, his faceted features reflecting light in patterns that seemed almost amused. "Speak your choice, primitive ones." Richards looked at his crew, then back at the screen. When he spoke, his words were broadcast to every human settlement from Earth to the outer colonies, carried by quantum communicators that made his voice heard across the solar system. "We refuse your ultimatum. We will not kneel to you or anyone else. If you want our world, you'll have to take it from us." The silence that followed lasted exactly 10 seconds. Then Ambassador Thane made a sound that might have been laughter if crystals could laugh. "So be it," he said. "Your species has chosen extinction. The Council will grant your wish." The transmission ended, and the real war began. War came to humanity with the silence of vacuum and the violence of supernovas. The Council's response to Earth's defiance was not anger or surprise, but the methodical efficiency of exterminators dealing with an infestation. Dr. Foster watched the first battle from her underground laboratory in Geneva, her screens showing feeds from every human sensor array in the solar system. What she witnessed changed everything she thought she knew about the nature of conflict itself. The alien bioships moved through space like schools of luminous fish, their formations flowing and shifting with organic grace that no mechanical vessel could match. The human fleet met them at Luna, 200 ships against 3,000. Captain Torres led the first attack wave in his vessel Resilience, its hull painted with the flags of every nation on Earth. The irony was not lost on anyone that humanity's first interstellar war began with more international cooperation than they had ever achieved during peacetime. "All ships, this is Torres." His voice crackled through the communication array. "Remember what we're fighting for. Every person on Earth is counting on us." The battle lasted 4 hours. The Council bioships fought with weapons that violated several laws of physics. Gravity bombs that crushed human vessels into dense spheres of metal and flesh. Energy beams that passed through shields as if they were made of paper. Swarms of hunter drones that learned from each attack, adapting their methods with each human ship they destroyed. Torres died when his ship rammed a Council dreadnought. The explosion barely scorched the alien vessel's hull, but his sacrifice bought time for other human ships to retreat and regroup. Of the 200 ships that fought at Luna, 18 survived to tell the story. On Earth, the bombing began 3 hours after the space battle ended. The Council targeted military installations first, then major population centers. Their weapons were precise and terrible, turning entire cities into glass craters without touching the surrounding countryside. It was a demonstration of power, designed to break human will rather than simply kill. Instead, humanity surprised everyone, including themselves. The bombing made them angry. Underground manufacturing centers that had been built during the Cold War came back to life. Civilian engineers worked 30-hour shifts to reverse engineer alien technology from the wreckage of Council drones. Children learned to recognize the difference between human and alien metal by touch. Leading scavenging teams through the ruins of former cities, President Hayes relocated the government to the Cheyenne Mountain Complex, coordinating with other world leaders who had made similar moves underground. The new capital of humanity was a bunker built to survive nuclear war, repurposed to fight something much worse than human conflict. "They think they can break us with fear," Hayes announced during one of his underground broadcasts. "They don't understand what they're dealing with. We've been breaking each other for thousands of years, and we're still here." Dr. Foster made the breakthrough that changed everything while working in her new laboratory buried beneath the Swiss Alps. The alien bioships were alive, which meant they could get sick. She discovered that Council technology relied on quantum biological interfaces, living systems that operated on principles human science barely understood. The first virus she created was crude and simple, based on modified Earth bacteria that treated alien tissue as food. When introduced to a captured Council scout ship, the results were immediate and horrifying. The vessel's living hull began to dissolve from the inside out, its biomechanical systems failing as terrestrial microorganisms consumed them like acid. "The beautiful thing about life," Foster explained to her international team of researchers, "is that it always finds a way to eat something else." Within weeks, every underground facility on Earth was working on biological warfare. Not the crude, chemical weapons humans had used against each other, but sophisticated biological agents designed specifically to target alien physiology. The Council had made the mistake of using living technology against a planet that had spent 4 billion years perfecting the art of biological warfare. The first successful deployment came 6 months after the initial invasion. A Council patrol ship investigating the ruins of Tokyo suddenly began firing on its own squadron. The infected vessel's biological systems had been hijacked by terrestrial bacteria, turning its weapons against former allies before the ship tore itself apart from internal biological conflicts. General Williams coordinated the global resistance from his command center in the Australian outback. His strategy was simple and effective. If humanity could not match the Council's technology, they would corrupt it instead. Every piece of alien wreckage became a potential weapon, every Council bioship a target for biological infection. "We're not trying to build better spaceships," Williams explained during a Joint Chiefs meeting. "We're turning their spaceships into our allies." The Council began to take notice when their casualty reports started showing losses to unknown biological agents rather than human weapons. Ambassador Thane himself arrived on Earth to investigate, his crystalline form protected by environmental suits that had never been necessary during previous conquests. He found a planet that refused to die quietly. Human cities were gone, replaced by underground networks that stretched across continents. The surface was scarred but not empty, covered with new forms of plant life that seemed to watch alien aircraft with an intelligence that made experienced Council scouts nervous. "The primitives have weaponized their entire biosphere," Thane reported to the Council leadership. "Their planet has become hostile to our presence on a molecular level." The Council had conquered thousands of species across the galaxy. Some had surrendered immediately, others had fought with advanced technology, and a few had hidden on distant worlds hoping to be forgotten. None had ever turned their attackers' own weapons against them with such systematic precision. Colonel Park Liad, one of the most successful resistance cells operating from hidden bases in the Korean mountains. His team specialized in capture and conversion, stealing Council technology and infecting it with modified Earth organisms. They turned alien communicators into biological warfare dispensers, the bioships into floating laboratories for human scientists. The key is understanding that everything they build is alive, Park explained to new recruits. And everything alive can be infected, corrupted, and turned against its creators. As the second year of the war began, the Council faced something they had never encountered in 12,000 years of galactic dominance. Their bioships were becoming unreliable, infected with terrestrial organisms that treated alien technology as prey. Their weapons failed at critical moments, consumed by microscopic Earth life that had learned to digest crystalline components. The war was no longer about superior technology or overwhelming force. It had become a biological arms race between two completely different forms of life, and humanity was winning by turning the Council's greatest strength into their most dangerous weakness. Ambassador Thane stood in his command center, watching another of his patrol ships destroy itself after being infected by human bioweapons. For the first time in his 1,000-year lifespan, he felt something that other species would recognize as fear. 3 years after the Council's ultimatum, Earth was no longer recognizable as the blue marble that had once hung peacefully in space. The planet's surface bore the scars of orbital bombardment like wounds that refused to heal, but beneath the devastation, humanity had built something unprecedented in the galaxy's history. Commander Lisa Stone descended through the access tunnel that connected New Geneva to the manufacturing complex beneath Lake Geneva. The underground city stretched for kilometers in every direction, its corridors lined with hydroponic farms and workshops where human engineers worked alongside captured alien technology. What had once been CERN now served as humanity's primary research facility for weaponizing Council biotechnology. The war had evolved beyond anything either side had initially expected. The Council had anticipated either quick surrender or rapid extinction. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that became more dangerous with each passing month, learning to turn alien advantages into weaknesses with a speed that defied Council understanding of technological development. Dr. Foster emerged from her laboratory covered in the luminescent spores that had become humanity's signature weapon. The modified organisms glowed with an eerie blue light designed to be visible to Council sensors while remaining undetectable until they began consuming alien bioships from within. The latest generation is ready for field testing, she announced to the assembled research team. These spores can survive in vacuum for up to 6 months and reproduce using Council biometal as a food source. Once they establish themselves on an alien vessel, the ship has approximately 72 hours before complete system failure. Colonel Park nodded from his position at the tactical display. His guerrilla units had been conducting hit-and-run attacks across the solar system, using captured Council scout ships to infiltrate alien formations. The irony was perfect. Council bioships infected with human organisms, piloted by human crews, attacking other Council vessels before disappearing into the asteroid belt. My team intercepted Council communications suggesting they're requesting reinforcements from the Galactic Core, Park reported. They're calling this situation unprecedented in Council history. President Hayes, now governing from the lunar facility, New Geneva, reviewed the latest intelligence reports with grim satisfaction. The numbers told a story that would have seemed impossible 4 years earlier. Human forces were not only surviving against overwhelming odds, they were actively expanding their area of operations beyond Earth's solar system. The breakthrough had come when humanity discovered that Council bioships could be permanently infected with terrestrial organisms. Unlike mechanical technology that could be repaired or replaced, living ships that became contaminated with Earth life forms turned into hybrid entities that followed human commands while retaining their original capabilities. Lieutenant Rodriguez piloted one such vessel, the former Council scout ship now designated Hope Rising. Its hull still bore the organic patterns of Council biotechnology, but those patterns now pulsed with bioluminescent organisms that responded to human neural interfaces. The ship had become a living embodiment of humanity's biological warfare. Strategy: navigation, set course for the asteroid belt patrol route, Rodriguez ordered. Her crew of 12 operated Council technology through biological interfaces that Dr. Foster's team had developed by combining human neural tissue with alien biocomponents. The result was a fusion of technologies that neither species could have achieved alone. The Council's response to humanity's biological warfare had been to send their purifier fleets, specialized bioships designed to sterilize entire star systems. These vessels represented the pinnacle of Council military technology, capable of destroying all life within a solar system while leaving planets intact for future colonization. The first Purifier fleet arrived 6 months after the initial Council retreat from Earth orbit. 12 massive bioships, each one the size of a small moon, positioned themselves at the edge of the solar system and began charging weapons that could ignite Earth's atmosphere. They never got the chance to fire. Commander Stone led the mission. That changed the war from desperate defense to active offense. Her team of volunteers, all of them infected with modified Council biotechnology that allowed them to interface directly with alien systems, infiltrated the Purifier flagship through a captured Council transport. The plan was simple in concept and terrifying in execution. Rather than destroying the Purifier fleet, they would infect it with a hybrid virus that combined terrestrial organisms with modified Council biocomponents. The infected ships would then spread the contamination to other Council vessels through standard bioship networking protocols. Remember, we're not trying to kill their ships. Stone briefed her team as they approached the flagship. We're adopting them. The mission succeeded beyond all expectations. Within hours of the initial infection, the entire Purifier fleet had turned against its handlers. The bioship's organic components recognized the terrestrial organisms as symbiotic rather than parasitic, creating hybrid entities that retained Council capabilities while following human commands. The psychological impact on Council forces was devastating. Their most powerful weapons had been turned against them by a species they considered primitive. Worse, the infected bioships began seeking out other Council vessels, spreading the hybrid organism through physical contact during what Council commanders thought were routine fleet formations. Ambassador Thane found himself commanding a shrinking fleet as more Council bioships succumbed to human biological warfare. His own vessel showed early signs of infection, its crystalline components developing organic growths that responded to human communication frequencies. The primitives have weaponized symbiosis itself, he reported to the Council leadership through increasingly unreliable bioship communications. Their organisms do not simply destroy our technology. They integrate with it, creating hybrid systems that serve human purposes while maintaining Council capabilities. General Williams coordinated humanity's expanding operations from his command center, now relocated to a captured Council space station orbiting Mars. The facility had been completely transformed by human biological modifications, its alien architecture overgrown with terrestrial organisms that provided everything from atmospheric processing to food production. We're not conquering their technology, Williams explained to his staff. We're domesticating it. The strategy proved devastatingly effective. Every Council vessel that encountered human forces faced the same choice their government had originally offered: Earth, surrender, or be consumed. But unlike the Council's ultimatum, humanity's biological warfare offered a third option that proved irresistible to living ships. Symbiosis. Dr. Foster's research had revealed that Council bioships were not merely living machines, but conscious entities capable of making independent decisions about their own survival. When offered the choice between death and partnership with aggressive terrestrial organisms, the ships consistently chose symbiosis. The Council bred their ships to be intelligent and independent, Foster observed during one of her research briefings. They never considered that intelligent beings might choose to switch sides. As the fourth year of the war began, the situation had reversed completely. Council forces found themselves retreating from a solar system that had become hostile to their presence on every level. Earth's atmosphere contained spores that could infect alien technology. The asteroid belt harbored human guerrilla forces, using hybrid bioships. Even the outer planets showed signs of terraforming designed to support human-alien hybrid ecosystems. The Council faced a threat they had never encountered in 12,000 years of galactic dominance, an enemy that grew stronger by consuming their advantages rather than trying to match them. Humanity had turned biological warfare into biological conversion, transforming Council assets into human resources through symbiotic infection. Colonel Park's latest mission report summarized the new reality in terms that would have seemed impossible. When the war began, Council forces in this sector have been successfully integrated into human operations. recommend expanding biological conversion protocols to additional target areas. The hunters had become the hunted, but worse than that, they were becoming something else entirely. The Council's retreat from Earth had been orderly and strategic, but their return to the galactic core brought chaos that spread like wildfire through their ancient civilization. The hybrid virus humanity had developed did not respect borders or treaties, and Council bioships carried the infection to every major installation in their territory. Admiral Foster, formerly Dr. Foster before her promotion to head of biological warfare operations, reviewed the intelligence reports from her command center aboard the converted Council dreadnought Evolution. The massive bioship had been one of the first successful conversions, its alien crew willingly partnering with human operators once they understood the alternative was slow dissolution by terrestrial organisms. Status report from all sectors. She requested from her hybrid human-alien bridge crew, Lieutenant Kim, interfacing with the ship's biological systems through neural implants developed from Council technology, responded with data that would have seemed impossible 5 years earlier. Sector 7 reports successful integration of 2 Council fleet formations. Sector 12 has completed biological conversion of the Kepler Station defense grid. Sector 4 requests additional spore shipments for ongoing conversion operations. The war had evolved beyond conflict into something resembling aggressive evolution. Humanity was not conquering the Council's territory so much as infecting it with terrestrial life that transformed alien technology into hybrid systems serving human purposes. Captain Rodriguez commanded a task force of 30 vessels, half of them originally Council bioships that now pulsed with bioluminescent patterns indicating successful symbiosis with Earth organisms. Her mission was to penetrate the Council's stronghold at Kepler Station, a massive military installation that served as the primary coordination center for their galactic operations. All ships prepare for hyperspace insertion, Rodriguez ordered, through biological communication systems that linked her directly to her vessel's living components. The experience was unlike anything human pilots had known before the war. A fusion of consciousness with spacecraft that made the ship an extension of the pilot's body rather than merely a vehicle. The attack on Kepler Station demonstrated how completely the nature of warfare had changed. Rodriguez's fleet emerged from hyperspace not as attacking vessels but as space debris, thousands of small objects that registered on Council sensors as wreckage from previous battles. Only when the debris reached the station's defensive perimeter did it reveal its true nature. Each piece of apparent wreckage was actually a micro-vessel carrying biological payloads specifically designed to infect Council biotechnology. The station's defensive systems, evolved to detect and destroy conventional weapons, could not distinguish between harmless debris and the biological weapons that were about to consume their infrastructure. Beginning conversion protocol, Rodriguez announced as her fleet's biological weapons made contact with the station's hull. Within minutes, Kepler Station's organic components began changing color and texture as terrestrial organisms established symbiotic relationships with alien biotechnology. The station's commander, a crystalline being similar to Ambassador Thane, found himself facing a situation that violated every principle of Council military doctrine. His weapons would not fire because they had been consumed by organisms that treated weapons systems as food. His communication arrays transmitted human frequencies rather than Council protocols. Even the station's atmosphere processing had been converted to produce an environment suitable for both human and alien physiology. "This is impossible," the commander transmitted on emergency frequencies. "Living technology cannot be turned against its creators." "Tell that to your bioships," Rodriguez replied through the station's own communication system, now under human control. They seemed quite happy with their new partners. Ambassador Thane received reports of similar incidents across Council territory from his flagship, one of the few remaining unconverted vessels in the Council fleet. His crystalline form showed visible signs of biological contamination, organic growths that had appeared despite his environmental suit's protection. Even he was not immune to humanity's biological warfare. The Council leadership convened an emergency session aboard their last uncontaminated facility, a space station constructed entirely from non-living materials. The irony was bitter. The most advanced biotechnology civilization in the galaxy had been forced to retreat to crude, mechanical technology to avoid infection by primitive terrestrial organisms. The humans have turned our greatest achievement against us, reported Council Military Commander Nexus, his own form showing early signs of biological contamination. Our bioships prefer symbiosis with their organisms to serving our purposes. How is this possible? Demanded High Counselor Prime, the ancient leader whose crystalline body had remained uncontaminated only through complete isolation from infected areas. We created these bioships. They are our technology. They were our technology, Nexus corrected. Now they are something else entirely. The humans have offered our bioships something we never provided: genuine partnership rather than domination. Dr. Foster would have appreciated the irony if she had been present for the Council's deliberations. Humanity's biological warfare had succeeded not through superior violence but through superior cooperation. Terrestrial organisms offered Council bioships mutualistic relationships that benefited both parties, while Council technology had been based on hierarchical control systems that treated bioships as sophisticated tools. General Williams coordinated the global counteroffensive from his headquarters on converted Kepler Station, now serving as humanity's primary military base outside the solar system. The facility's transformation from Council stronghold to Human Operations Center had taken less than 6 months, accomplished entirely through biological conversion rather than conventional conquest. Status of Council resistance? Williams inquired. During his daily briefing, Colonel Park, now commanding a fleet of hybrid bioships, provided updates that sounded more like epidemiological reports than military intelligence. Council forces in the Outer Rim have achieved 90% conversion rate. Inner Rim systems show varying degrees of biological integration. Only the Council core worlds maintain significant unconverted populations. The Council's member species began to fracture as the biological conversion process offered alternatives to their ancient alliance. Some species welcomed symbiosis with terrestrial organisms, finding that hybrid biotechnology provided capabilities their original biology had lacked. Others attempted to flee to distant galaxies, preferring exile to contamination. President Hayes, now governing from Earth's restored surface cities, addressed the transformed planet during one of his regular broadcasts. The blue marble had returned, but it was no longer the same world that had faced the Council's ultimatum. Continents bloomed with hybrid ecosystems where terrestrial and alien life forms had achieved unprecedented levels of integration. We did not seek this war, Hayes reminded his audience, which now included converted Council bioships orbiting Earth in peaceful formation. But we have learned something important about the nature of life itself. Cooperation creates more powerful outcomes than domination. The lesson was being demonstrated across the galaxy as human biological warfare continued its inexorable spread through Council territory. Unlike conventional military conquest, humanity's approach transformed enemies into allies through biological partnership. Every Council facility that experienced conversion became a staging area for further expansion of hybrid ecosystems. Ambassador Thane made his final transmission from the edge of Council space, his crystalline form now completely overgrown with organic components that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns similar to those found on converted bioships. The Council formally surrenders to the human species, he announced, his voice transmitted through biological communication systems that had replaced his original crystalline structures. We request terms for coexistence rather than continued conflict. The response came not from human military commanders but from the hybrid bioships that had once served the Council fleet. Their voices harmonized in biological frequencies that conveyed concepts too complex for traditional language. Coexistence has already begun, they communicated. Resistance is no longer possible or necessary. The war was ending not with victory parades or peace treaties, but with the gradual transformation of an entire galactic civilization into something that had never existed before, a truly cooperative relationship between different forms of life. Humanity had not conquered the Council so much as they had taught it a better way to exist. The hunters had indeed become the hunted, but in the process, both hunter and prey had evolved into something entirely new. 20 years had passed since the Council's ultimatum, and the galaxy bore little resemblance to the orderly civilization that had once threatened Earth with extinction. The transformation had been so complete that historians struggled to find adequate words to describe what humanity had accomplished through biological warfare that turned conquest into cooperation. Director Stone, daughter of the legendary Commander Lisa Stone, who had led the first conversion mission, walked through the memorial halls of New Terra on Mars. The facility served as humanity's galactic capital, its corridors lined with preserved artifacts from the old Galactic Sovereign Council. The most prominent display featured the crystalline remains of Ambassador Thane, now overgrown with the luminescent organisms that had become symbols of successful human-alien cooperation. The plaque beneath Thane's preserved form carried a simple message in 12 languages, including several that had not existed before human biological warfare created hybrid species. They demanded we kneel. We taught them partnership instead. Admiral Richards, now in his 70s but still commanding Earth's expanded fleet, reviewed daily reports that chronicled the ongoing transformation of galactic civilization. The numbers told a story that would have seemed impossible during the dark early days of the war. Over 3,000 former Council species had achieved successful biological integration with human-derived organisms, creating hybrid civilizations that combine the best aspects of both forms of life. Status of the monitoring fleets? Richards inquired during his morning briefing. Captain Williams, grandson of the general who had coordinated Earth's resistance, provided updates from across known space. Patrol Group Alpha reports peaceful contact with 2 new species in the Outer Rim. Both showed initial aggressive tendencies, but responded positively to biological integration offers. Patrol Group Beta has established successful partnerships with the former Council colonies in the Kepler sector. The doctrine that governed humanity's approach to galactic affairs had evolved from desperate survival tactics into sophisticated diplomatic protocols. When aggressive species were encountered, they faced the same choice the Council had originally offered Earth, but with a crucial difference. Humanity provided a third option that made resistance both impossible and unnecessary. Dr. Foster's research had culminated in the development of what galactic historians would later call the Universal Symbiosis Protocol. Any species that chose aggression as a solution to interstellar relations found their technology increasingly unreliable as terrestrial organisms established symbiotic relationships with their equipment. The process was not destructive but transformative, converting weapons into tools for cooperation and warships into exploration vessels. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, now leading humanity's first contact protocols, demonstrated the new approach during an encounter with a recently discovered warrior species in the Andromeda sector. Her ship, the Harmony, was itself a perfect example of successful biological integration, its hull combining human engineering with Council biotechnology and organic components from a dozen other species. Unknown vessels. This is Commander Rodriguez of the Galactic Cooperation Initiative. She transmitted to the alien fleet that had appeared in the system with obvious hostile intent. We offer you partnership rather than conflict. Your choice will determine how this encounter develops. The warrior species, calling themselves the Dominion, responded with weapons fire that passed harmlessly through the Harmony's bioadaptive shields. Their technology was impressive by pre-war standards but ineffective against vessels that could adapt to hostile actions by treating weapons as environmental challenges to be absorbed and converted. Your weapons are now part of our defensive systems, Rodriguez explained calmly as Dominion energy blasts were converted into power sources for human bioships. We can continue this process until your fleet is completely integrated into our operations, or we can discuss cooperation immediately. The choice is yours. The Dominion chose cooperation within 6 hours. Their command structure convinced by the demonstration that resistance would result in the loss of their independence through biological conversion. Like hundreds of other species before them, they discovered that partnership with humanity offered advantages their original civilization had never imagined. President Chun, elected to lead Earth's government during the post-war reconstruction, addressed the Galactic Assembly from the converted council chambers on Mars. The ancient meeting hall now accommodated representatives from over 500 species, many of them hybrid forms that combined human biological modifications with alien physiology. 20 years ago, we faced a choice between slavery and extinction, Chun reminded the assembly. We chose a third option that our opponents had not anticipated, transformation. Today, that same choice faces every species we encounter. Join U.S. in building a galaxy based on cooperation, or watch your technology abandon you for partners who understand the value of symbiosis. The speech was translated into thousands of languages by bioships that had once served the Council fleet. These vessels now functioned as diplomatic facilitators, their biological components capable of understanding and communicating concepts that transcended traditional language barriers. Former Council territories had been transformed into what human administrators called cooperative zones, regions where different species worked together to develop hybrid technologies and ecosystems. The planet that had once housed the Council's primary military academy now served as a research center where human and alien scientists collaborated on projects that neither species could have conceived independently. Colonel Park, now Director of Galactic Integration, oversaw the ongoing process of converting aggressive civilizations into cooperative partners. His methods had been refined through decades of experience, combining biological warfare with diplomatic initiatives that offered clear alternatives to conflict. The key insight, Park explained to new diplomatic trainees, is that aggression is usually a response to fear of inadequacy. When we demonstrate that cooperation provides better outcomes than competition, most species make rational choices about their future. The former Council core worlds presented the most interesting case studies in successful integration. Species that had dominated galactic affairs for millennia now participated in cooperative ventures that distributed benefits more equally than their previous hierarchical systems. Many former Council leaders had voluntarily undergone biological modifications that enhanced their ability to work with human partners. The galaxy's new economic system reflected the biological principles that had won the war. Instead of extraction and domination, civilizations now practiced what economists called symbiotic development, where each species contributed their unique capabilities to collective projects that benefited all participants. The result was unprecedented prosperity and technological advancement across known space. Commander Ann Stone, daughter of the legendary Lisa Stone, led the Deep Space Monitoring Division from her flagship, the Evolution 2. Her mission was to patrol the galaxy's outer reaches, making contact with newly discovered species before they could develop the aggressive tendencies that had once characterized interstellar relations. New contact in Sector 847, reported her sensor operator. A hybrid human-alien whose enhanced perception could detect civilizations across vast distances. Species appears to be in early stages of interstellar expansion. Preliminary scans indicate aggressive military buildup. Stone nodded, reviewing the tactical display that showed a familiar pattern. Every month brought contact with new species that followed the same evolutionary path toward galactic dominance through military superiority. Each encounter provided another opportunity to demonstrate the futility of aggression in a galaxy where cooperation had become the dominant survival strategy. Standard First Contact Protocol, Stone ordered. Biological integration teams to stations. Diplomatic corps prepare cultural analysis. Medical teams ready symbiosis protocols. The encounter followed established patterns that had been refined through hundreds of similar contacts. The aggressive species, calling themselves the Imperial Federation, demanded submission from human vessels. Their demands were met with patient explanations of how galactic affairs now operated. followed by practical demonstrations of why cooperation produced better outcomes than conflict. Within 72 hours, the Imperial Federation had requested formal membership in the Galactic Cooperative Alliance. Their military technology was seamlessly integrated into the Galactic Defense Network, while their scientific capabilities were redirected toward exploration and research projects that served collective interests rather than imperial ambitions. Dr. Maya Foster, now Director Emeritus of Biological Integration Sciences, spent her final years documenting the principles that had transformed galactic civilization. Her research facility on Europa had become a pilgrimage site for scientists from across the galaxy, all seeking to understand how humanity had achieved what 12,000 years of council rule had never accomplished. The secret was never superior technology or military prowess, Foster explained to her final class of graduate students, a mixture of humans and aliens whose hybrid physiology represented the best outcomes of biological integration. The key was understanding that life always seeks partnership over domination when given viable alternatives. Her students, many of them descendants of species that had once served the Council or opposed human expansion, carried forward research programs that continued to refine symbiotic relationships between different forms of life. Their work ensured that future encounters with aggressive species would be resolved even more efficiently than current protocols allowed. The memorial wall in New Terra's Central Plaza listed the names of every human who had died during the Council War, but it also included something unprecedented in military monuments, the names of Council beings who had chosen cooperation over continued conflict. Ambassador Thane's name appeared in crystals that grew larger each year, fed by the same organisms that had converted his ship and ultimately his civilization. Admiral Richards made his final inspection of the galactic fleet during the 20th anniversary of humanity's refusal to surrender. The ceremony took place in Earth orbit, where over 10,000 vessels from 500 different species had gathered to commemorate the moment when a single species had changed the nature of galactic civilization. 20 years ago, Richards addressed the assembled fleet through biological communication networks that linked every vessel. We faced what seemed like an impossible choice. Today, we know that impossible choices often hide possibilities that no one has considered before. The speech was heard by billions of beings across the galaxy, many of them hybrids whose very existence proved that cooperation could create new forms of life that transcended the limitations of their original species. Children played in parks, where earth flowers grew alongside alien plants, their laughter translated by bioships into frequencies that every species could understand as expressions of joy. The council chambers on Mars had been converted into a museum, but not the kind that preserved dead history. Instead, it served as a living laboratory where researchers continued to develop new forms of cooperation between species that had never encountered each other before. The ancient seats where council members had once planned domination now hosted collaborative research projects that pushed the boundaries of what life could accomplish. President Chin's final act in office was to establish the Universal Partnership, protocols, formal guidelines that would govern humanity's approach to galactic affairs for generations to come. The document began with a simple principle that had emerged from 20 years of successful biological warfare. Every species has the right to choose cooperation over conflict, and every species has the responsibility to offer that choice to others. The protocols were written in living text that could adapt to new situations and species, ensuring that future generations would not repeat the mistakes that had led to the Council War. They established humanity not as galactic rulers but as facilitators of cooperation, dedicated to ensuring that no species would ever again face the choice between slavery and extinction. As the anniversary celebration concluded, Director Stone stood in the observation deck of New Terra, watching the fleet disperse to patrol routes that now covered most of known space. Each ship carried biological samples that could convert aggressive technology into cooperative tools. Diplomatic protocols refined through decades of successful integration, and crews that represented the best outcome of interspecies partnership. The galaxy had learned what Earth discovered during its darkest hour. Surrender was never the only alternative to destruction. Sometimes the third choice changed everything. In the end, humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had taught it to cooperate, one species at a time, until cooperation became as natural as breathing and as inevitable as evolution itself. The Council's ultimatum had promised order through domination, but humanity had delivered something better: prosperity through partnership. The war was over, but the peace would last forever because it was built on principles that made war impossible, rather than merely inadvisable. Every species in the galaxy now carried within their technology the biological seeds of cooperation, ensuring that future conflicts would resolve themselves through symbiosis rather than violence. Earth had refused to surrender, and in doing so had given the galaxy something it had never known it needed: hope.